It's been a while since we've done the last Den of Truth video. Small talk, some couple changes. So obviously, as you can see, he ain't Tino here. So small talk is going to be a pretty much remarketed, rechanged it to more focusing on technology, politics, cultural, and entrepreneurship and financial literacy. So you'll see me and Tino to jump on here and there, but mostly of the time I'm going to be interviewing some guests. And today we actually got really one exciting person that we've known each other for a while now. Through school, been keeping up with this dude, one of the hardest workers I know, one of the smartest dudes I know. Very exciting. Anyone who's focused on sneakers and reselling sneakers, this is the dude. This is the company as well. I'm not too sure everyone knows, but you should know in the market is PUSHAS. So today we got Justin on, man. How you going?
Thanks for having me, man. You humble me, bro. Like, I don't want to disappoint the audience. You're talking me up, and I'm gonna let them down.
Yeah, man. No, that's cool, man. Look. And day, man. A lot of young entrepreneurs coming out, man. But like, you've been in this game for a minute now. You know what I mean? Like, based on what I'm seeing, especially from the area, bro. So yeah, man. I just want to start off. Just tell me about your story, man. Like, where you came from. What you did in the past, and how did you get here, and what is PUSHAS at the end of it, man? Like, how'd you get into it?
So essentially what happened was, so I think I was into sneakers from school, right? I think, growing up, everyone's at the Foot Locker, like basketball was big in our school, and I was bad at basketball, but all my mates were, into it. So, sneakers were always a thing. I can never afford to buy them. So I was always kind of on looking forward. And then, fast forward, went through school, went to uni, went through uni and obviously the corporate life just wasn't for me. So, I saw that, working in corporate, like, I think it's great for certain people, but for my personality, it just wasn't it, to be honest. I found that, I had ideas, I worked quite different to everyone else. I couldn't stick to a structure. And to be honest, during that time, I was like, well, am I like cut out for this, right? Like, I was able to, get into a law firm and do all that stuff. And, but I don't know, my personality just wasn't me.
Yeah.
And I was trying to fit into a mold that I guess just, you fit into a mold that you think is what's kind of expected from you.
Yeah.
But then you realize, like, you rather do something that's for you, even if it's not right. And so, during uni, I think it was like my last 2 years in uni, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to start reselling sneakers.
Yeah.
So my partner, she's actually like a big sneakerhead as well.
Yeah.
So she, she's my 50-50 partner in this, and she's my partner in life as well.
Yeah.
And she's also into sneakers. She from the area as well. I was from Fairfield, she's from Canley Heights. Like, same thing, right?
Yeah.
So, and she was into sneakers, and so I saw that she was spending a lot of her money buying sneakers, and I saw that there was a thriving market. So back then, when we first started, when we first got into it, it was probably about 2015. From there, the business hasn't started yet, but from there, we just saw that there was a thriving aftermarket. It was really small. It was really niche back then. It was really underground.
Yeah.
People were trying to import sneakers from the US, from Japan. People were buying, like Jordans back then around, and you see a couple of people, not as much now, but you see people lining up at Foot Locker and trying to cop sneakers, and I found it really interesting. And it wasn't until the big, like the first Yeezys that came out, where I saw this like mass hysteria in the market, right? And that's when people were just like going ham. And Yeezys, you buy them for $320 or whatever, and you're selling them for like $1,000 each, $1.5 grand. And I was like, this is insane, right?
Yeah.
I was just like, this is insane. And during uni, like, did what I could to make a couple extra bucks, right?
Yeah.
And then what happened was I went to the US. So I was doing summer school at UC Berkeley. And obviously, I visited LA, and I just saw, I went to Flight Club, I went to Round 2, I went to Stadium Goods, like all the big sneaker stores, and I was like, why is there kind of nothing big here in Australia?
Yeah.
And at that time, that was when Goat and Stockx were also doing extremely well. Like, they probably would have launched a year by then, and their growth they were just all over the news.
Yeah.
And I was like, at first it was just, for me, it was just, why isn't they're anything here. Let's get Australians onto sneakers, right? And so me and my partner were just like, let's put all our life savings into this.
Yeah.
And
That's
you know,
a big risk, man.
yeah,
All your life savings, man.
Mind you, we only made like 20 an hour, 25 an hour back then, and it was just small savings. But we would have saved up like a couple of years by then. And we're just like, let's just. And I think when you're young, you're a bit more ballsy as well.
So how much like, because a lot of people want to start businesses, right?
Yeah.
And but they don't know where to start. They don't know how much to save. Obviously, it varies between different businesses. But for you personally, man, and you and your partner, what's it, Sandy? Sandy, is that?
Yeah, Sandy. Yeah.
So how much did it cost initially to start this thing up?
Yeah, so I think there was different stages, right? So at first, we only put maybe 30 grand into it.
Yeah.
And that was just to get started. But obviously, as you go, you have to keep pumping money in. And so, we had side jobs. We did whatever we could to pump money in. And I think we're looking at our profit and loss statements from a couple of years ago. And we're like, well, we pumped over 100 grand into this over time, right?
Yeah.
And it's just it's just money. Every week you might, okay, we need 500 to pay for this. We need 600 to pay for this. And it's just money going in. But over the years, it was a lot of money that we put in.
Yeah.
But I think at first you start small. So at first, I guess my advice to people is just put 10, 20 grand, right? See how it goes. If it flops, you wouldn't have lost too much.
Yeah.
It will hurt, but it's like a...
Yeah, because at the end of the day, man, you're young and you still got a whole decade ahead of you. So you might as well, this being in your 20s is the biggest asset in your life right now, because you can take the most risks. And
Exactly.
if you fail and you hit 30, not saying that 30 is late, but if you hit 30 and you're okay, you know what, I tried. You can still make your money back from just working a normal job again. But
Exactly.
you'd rather do that before responsibilities come up and stuff, right?
Exactly, mortgages and stuff like that,
Exactly,
right?
bro. Shit's gonna tie you down when you get older, so take more risks when you're young, man. But look, man, obviously that's your story, and most people didn't know coming from a law background and then moving to sneakers is a big different change in your head, right? But just let's dive deep into what is PUSHAS. How would you explain it? If I was someone, because right now I don't know much about sneaker reselling.
Yeah.
But for me, I find PUSHAS. So what's PUSHAS essentially doing? What's the platform and what's the business all about?
Yeah, so PUSHAS is now probably one of the biggest authentic sneaker platforms in Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah.
So what we do is, resellers send their sneakers in. We authenticate, we help them sell it, and then we take a cut once it's sold.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of the basic bare bones of the business, and that's the model that we've been building the past couple of years now.
Yeah.
But more than that, I think PUSHAS is a bigger brand now, and it represents kind of hustling, and it represents the name PUSHAS itself, right?
Yeah.
We came up with that name. Well, my partner actually came up with that name because number one, she watched Mean Girls, and I think the teacher was like, we're pushers, man. I push people, that line, that quote. But also, growing up out west, you hear that lingo around, right?
Pushing, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
If you know,
right?
you know.
If you know, you know, right?
Push, yeah.
And it's I guess for us, it's the lifestyle of making your own bread and going out and hunting for what you earn, and it's all about being creative and bringing out. You're in a pusher, right? Being able to, get what you know. Get all your skills and kind of make something of yourself.
Yeah, fair enough. And so essentially, PUSHAS is a sneaker reseller marketplace.
Yes.
Right. So when it comes to that, so I'm looking at your website. I check your all the shoes that you're listing right now. So are those sneakers that's being listed? That's from a reseller that's putting it in, you guys listed for them. Is that how it works? Or you guys hold in inventory or?
Yeah, so they actually send it to us. So we hold in inventory, we warehouse it for them. We store it for them. There's insurance. There's kind of everything to help protect the sneakers as well.
Yeah.
And then once we sell it, we ship it out to the customer, and then they get their paycheck.
Okay, cool. And obviously you mentioned that where you was you went to Cali. You saw how big the market was over there. How big is the market right now in Australia? When you first saw it, how big was it, and then how big is it now in Australia, the sneaker market? Sneaker marketplace.
I think when we first started, it would have probably only been the resale market in Australia was only maybe 100 mil, 150 mil, if that.
Yeah.
It could have been a lot less.
Yeah.
But now, we started PUSHAS in 2017. Now it's 2021. I'd say the market's anywhere from 150 mil to 250 mil.
Yeah.
and that's people not only transacting on our marketplace but also on other platforms, buying on the global marketplaces as well, trading each other in Facebook groups, on Gumtree, on eBay, etc. There's a lot of activity there that I think people don't see, and the great thing with sneakers as well is that the average order volume is quite high, right? So the average sneaker is maybe 350, 400, 450, and so it doesn't take a lot of sneakers to sell to kind of grow that market size.
Yeah. Okay. And so let's say if I wanted to start to resell sneakers, what's some of the things that I need to consider? What should I look for in sneakers? And what are some of the things that you would give to someone who's starting off to succeed in the market or even to get started? What are some of the things, practical things, and what are some of the things I should look for?
Yeah, so number one, I think it's building your networks, so understanding where to get the sneakers. So I think that's the number one thing that trips people up the most. They don't know where to get them, right? So it's just whether people who can get it for you overseas, or whether you camp out at Foot Locker or you buy online, and now it's getting easier and easier. So I think that's kind of the first thing, knowing where to get your stock, right? Like any business. The second part is breaking it down would be understanding what sneakers to buy, and as a sneakerhead, it's quite easy. You kind of have that intuition and you know what's going to be hot, what's going to be not, right? But I think generally what I would look for is you look at the history of the sneaker, you look at if it's a collaboration, you look at who's the kind of celebrity endorsement for the sneaker. Like if Drake's wearing that sneaker, that's going to pop off, right?
Yeah.
And understanding the narrative behind it, right? Understanding that some sneakers are obviously worth more than others, and it's just kind of building up your intuition and building up, I guess, the data in your head to understand what's going to do or what's not going to do, and that's basically kind of the start. And once you kind of get that right, you're able to acquire the sneakers and then sell them for a profit. You just keep rinsing and repeating that.
Okay, cool. And so obviously you mentioned different ways that you can acquire these sneakers before you resell them, right?
Yeah.
So right now, my understanding is you find through a platform or some kind of intermediary to get the sneakers first. And some of the variables that you're looking for is obviously the price of the sneakers determined by supply and demand, right? So if there's less supply of the shoe,
of course,
and it's high demand, then obviously the price is going to skyrocket. And that's the way it works through Stockx as well. So you got to do the same thing. And then some of the things that I should be looking for then would be the cultural influence that it has from the shoe itself. What kind of artists are endorsing it right now? Are there any other variables that, as a sneakerhead, like I should be looking into as well? Like, what are other things I can, I guess, set a benchmark so if it ticks the boxes of a good shoe?
Yeah, so I think you covered the main ones, right? But I think it's also looking at and trying to understand where you think this sneaker stands, like overall in the culture, right?
Yeah.
Like it might be a new sneaker, but if you're like, okay, this is the first. Let's give an example of the first Travis Scott Jordan 1s that's ever come out. You know that's going to have its place in history, and you know that even though the price might be, let's say, low now, that in 2-3 years' time, provided Nike or Adidas or Jordan or whatever brand you're buying isn't re-releasing it, you know that it's just going to go up.
That's one thing that tripped me out a bit as well. Is like, why do some of these like Nike, all the shoe manufacturers, right? Obviously they release the shoes in the market, but then obviously you can get TNs like widespread now, or you can get Air Maxes widespread. But then some of the shoes are seasonal, even like they stop producing it. Yep. Is that intentionally to raise the prices up for the sneaker reselling? So what's the thought behind these companies of why they're doing that?
So a lot of these companies have different tiers of their stock, right? So there's like tier 0, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and obviously tier 0 is the most rare. And it's all about brand building. It's like, for me, it's like, let's give an example of like Mercedes, right? Like why do they have the Mercedes, GT? And that's like the most rarest, the rarest car. Sorry, I was going to say sneakers. The rarest car, right? And then there's the C200, right?
Which is widespread.
Widespread, right? And so the Halo sneakers or the Halo cars, they're the ones that generally build the brand for the rest of the stock. So people who can't buy into the Mercedes GT, they're going to buy into the brand through the entry level cars. So it's the same with sneakers, right? You can't buy the kind of creme de la creme 20 grand sneaker. You're going to then be like, oh, I want that, I can't afford it, I'm going to buy into the entry level one. And that's how they build their brands, right? Because if you have just entry-level sneakers or entry-level cars, you're going to be seen as an entry-level brand.
Yeah.
So you need to have the halo
Yeah.
product.
Yeah. Okay. And that builds brand equity, brand value, and that's how
Exactly.
people get invested into buying these sneakers.
Exactly.
And that's how they trade with it. Okay. So you mentioned waiting outside in the cold because it's crazy when it was crazy when Yeezys first came out. Everybody was just lining up. But like I said, one thing is like Foot Locker, you can line up, all right? But what other marketplaces are there, or what other platforms should I get started into looking to acquire the sneakers? Can you list a few?
Yeah, no, for sure. So for me, like I find it works quite well if you're a reseller to just build up the contacts. So the regular people who are buying this stock, you can then just go to them and be like, hey, I want to buy this off you, and usually they'll sell you for a bit cheaper.
Yeah.
And then you can still make your markup. But there's Foot Locker, there's Nike sites, there's Nike stores as well, Adidas stores, JD Sports, pretty much any sneaker store that you have access to, they're going to sell this stock.
Yeah.
Obviously some stores are bigger, like Foot Locker's generally the biggest one.
Yeah.
But and then there's other sites as well. Like I'd say online there's all these. There's too many to list, to be honest. There's heaps of boutique stores.
Yeah.
An example is like InQ, for example. A lot of those guys drop sneakers as well. So it's just really doing your research because it's quite. Once you kind of dig into the industry, it's actually quite deep where it goes, and there's just so many different players. So it's understanding that and understanding if you can get it for a good price, and then you sell it for a bit higher to the end consumer, and that's how you make your markup.
Okay, cool. So when I acquire the sneakers, I'll find marketplaces like StockX or PUSHAS to pretty much give it to you guys, and then you guys handle the fulfillment for you guys.
So I'm good friends with the guys at StockX as well, and I find that for them, generally if you're selling, you list it up on their platform. They don't actually take your inventory.
Yeah.
So you list it up on their platform, and then once if it does sell, you send your shoe to them. And then they authenticate it and then send it to the customer, right?
Okay.
And I find that StockX is great. Like StockX is great, especially for if you're reselling a low amount of volume. But once you get higher, and I've got a lot of these cats that are selling, let's say per drop, they're dropping like 1,000 pairs, right? So you think about how much volume's going through. They're not going to list every individual pair on StockX. So they go through us, and that's what we specialize in. We specialize for bulk resellers, the guys who are selling more than 5 pairs a month. They start to then come to us because what we do is, like I said, we house all their stock for them. It ships in bulk to us. We manage it, we process it, and then we list it up, and they just get paid every single time. So it's a lot easier and it's a lot more hands off.
Yeah.
But obviously, if you're starting small, I'd definitely recommend StockX because I think it gives you a good idea of where the market's at, and you understand doing one by one. But then once you scale up, you need to find a more scalable way to do it.
And what's the because all right, so how much money can I actually make off sneakers? And I know this varies and depends on the sneakers you're selling, right? But like on average, how much do you see? Obviously, because you guys are giving the opportunity for kids and for anyone to resell the sneakers. How much do you is it really they're seeing from a margin perspective? How much money can you actually make out of these sneakers? Like how viable is this market right now as a reseller?
Yeah, so I think the margin depends on what stage of the reselling you're at. So an example is if you're buying straight from Foot Locker or straight from the store, your margin is going to be a lot higher. It could be anywhere from 50 to like 150, 200, even sometimes it's like 1,000%, right? But if you're buying from, say, a bulk reseller and you're selling it to, through again, your margin might be a bit low because they're kind of like your wholesalers, so to speak, right? But generally, for sneakers, I aim to get anywhere from 20 to 30%.
Yeah.
And for me, it's that's a good return.
Yeah.
And if you're a reseller, a top resellers, profit wise, they're making 6 figures, 7 figures, depending on how they're doing and how much volume you push through. So it's a volume game. So if you think about, let's give an example, right? You buy a shoe for let's say $230, you're selling it for about $400. After PUSHAS fees, we take about roughly it's about 15 to 18% depending on how much volume you do.
Yep.
You might be making let's say 50 to 100. Let's say back of the envelope maths, 50 to 100 a pair, right? If you're doing 10,000 a week in sales, you can start to figure out that it's a lot of money. obviously 10, like let's say you're doing 10,000 a week or a month. That's on the high end of things, and that's like kind of like the biggest players. You know, I'd say the average reseller could sell probably about let's say 20 a month.
Yeah.
20 times 100 a month, like in profit. That's
bank.
Yeah, you can start to figure it out. And a lot of these kids are 18, 19. You know, I did not see that money when I was that age, at all.
Okay.
So it can be really good.
Interesting, man. Interesting. And all right, well, I guess so. PUSHAS is giving the opportunity for people to resell the sneakers, and I see like that's a great thing because right now financial freedom is a big focus for young people. Right, we're starting to see a lot of trends through the internet. We're starting to see a lot of misinformation when it comes to that as well, where get rich quick schemes and stuff. But there's a lot of quality content out there as well. And so I guess my question is more so. PUSHAS explained what's your idea of the future for PUSHAS? Like, what are some of the things you're looking to achieve? What's some of the priorities that you guys have planned for for the next couple of years or so?
Yeah, so for us, our mission, like first and foremost, is to empower resellers, right? Like my vision is that I want to see kids that are 18, 20, or even we have people who, and this is a great story that I had was. We had someone during COVID that was laid off at Qantas, right? And he's reselling and he's using that money to pay his bills, pay his mortgage, and feed his family, right? So stories like that is what makes it meaningful for me to do this business. It's all like for us, it's all about empowering resellers and being able to get them to financial independence, right? The fact that you don't have to work minimum wage somewhere and you're doing something you love, like to me, that's so powerful.
Yeah.
And that's first and foremost our mission. Secondly, we want to be able to really build upon that mission and provide different services in different ways to really help these resellers to become great businesses upon themselves.
Yeah.
That's the second goal that I have, and the third goal is to really turn sneakers into an alternate asset.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's in a nutshell, that's what I'm building towards.
Yeah, and we were talking this for a minute offline as well, and obviously I read the tweet today actually, right before we linked. So let's talk more about the alternative asset class and sneakers being that, right? Because I read on your tweet today where it said since September 2020 to March today, well it's April now, but to March 2021. So if anyone knows the S&P 500, that's the index that tracks 500 of the US biggest companies, and typically people can put their money in just one stock that does it. And you said that they gave a 12.65% gain.
Yeah.
Now the PUSHAS sneaker fund gave investors a return of 32% gain.
Yeah, so
let's talk about that, man. That's what I'm really interested in. And I think a lot of people who are trying to find different alternative assets besides stocks, besides crypto, besides real estate, this is something that they can put in from an entry level point of view, right? So let's can you walk me through what's that all about, and can you what's the concept of that?
Yeah, so right now, how it started was I needed capital to really buy sneakers. And, I was lucky because I had a couple of investors that, one of the biggest angels investors in Australia, like they really believed in us.
Yeah.
And they were just like, here's some money to try it, right? So at first, we raised 210 grand. It was just a small amount just to test it. But then, the first 2 or 3 months, it was just booming. And I was able to really systematically provide great returns on a risk-adjusted basis as well. So, the sneakers that we invest in, it's diversified. Yeah. So it's not like I'm buying one sneaker and, that can go to zero. Our portfolio is a wide range of sneakers.
How many sneakers you got so far?
I'd say it's like probably about like 3,000 sneakers now.
3,000 sneakers.
And then, it went quite well. And then we raised another 300 on top. So now we raised a total of 510K. And the goal is just to provide exposure to an alternate asset that's not stocks, not bonds, not debt. And it's a lot of investors that they want to hedge their portfolio, right? Yeah. And, because, let's look at the markets right now, right? It's a crazy bull market, and you don't want to be all in if you know that there might be drawdowns, etc. So, my idea, and right now it's only available to sophisticated investors who are able to take a risk on a financial product like this. But essentially, down the line, I want to be able to provide access to everyone to have exposure.
Yeah.
And I want to run like a Vanguard or a BlackRock, right? For sneakers, and so you can buy like an index fund, and you're exposed to like thousands of sneakers.
Yeah.
And hopefully we were able to provide a good return.
So essentially, so you guys are actually looking into an ETF in the future? Like, is this going to be listed in the ASX or something like that?
That's definitely on the cards,
Yeah.
right? But it's just fine tuning it and getting it to a point. Because right now, the way we run it, it's quite still private, and there's no kind of regulatory oversight yet. Because a lot of these investors can take the risk, so they don't need kind of the I guess the proper kind of ASX style reporting, but that's because it's also on us. Like if I had to incur that cost at this moment, it will cost too much, right?
Yeah.
And to get us through, right, like lawyers and accountants, like we have a small team of lawyers and accountants right now, but to get it to that level, it's quite high.
Yeah.
And so we want to get the volume up and get the funds under management up higher, so that we can then start to have the infrastructure to do it. And I've been approached by a couple of hedge funds that biggest in Australia, a couple of guys, and they're like, if this works out, we can scale it up and actually get it to a point.
And how many assets under management you're doing right now?
If you did the numbers, using the growth rate, you can probably figure it out. That rate on 510K, like you can figure it out.
So right now, so you initially managed 510K, and then it times that now after you release those numbers. That's the return, man. That's what we're talking about, man.
I can't really disclose that, but that's roughly if you can figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. Cool, man. And okay, and obviously, just a little bit before we just to backtrack a bit, we mentioned that volume is the game for resellers.
Yep.
Right, they acquire, and the more volume they pump out through guys like you, PUSHAS, and then they can make a cut out of that. Now, this sneaker asset class, this sneaker fund that you got going on, it's more? Are you guys holding these? How do you guys invest in these sneakers? Like, do you guys just buy these sneakers and then you hold it? Like, when you say 3,000, like, what do you mean by that?
So we buy and we hold it.
Yeah.
So we buy, we store, we hold, and then once it sells, that gives you realized gains. And it sells, and then that goes back into the fund, and then we reinvest it again.
Yeah.
It's like reinvesting dividends, for example. Yeah. So it just keeps growing and growing and growing over time. And hopefully it gets to a point where it gets to the goal is we're going to hit 7 figures quite soon. So the goal is to get to 8 figures, 9 figures, and then it's a proper fund, right? Like my biggest concern actually, and this is. We're still testing this as well, is how big can it get? Like, there's only a certain amount of sneakers that people will buy, right?
Yeah.
But it's just, we're just going to try it, YOLO, see how it goes. And if it gets big, it gets big. Like, So it like I said, it's still a test in progress, and it's a really fun experiment, especially for our investors as well.
Yeah.
To see this. So.
Okay. Cool. So, obviously, holding 3,000 sneakers. So that's something that you guys have in your warehouse right now. 3,000 sneakers.
Yeah.
And the price is determined obviously by supply and demand. But how do you guys? What's the investment strategy right here? Because right now it looks like it's a long-term hold investment, right?
Yep.
How do you pick the sneakers? Where do you get the indications from? And how do you look into the value of that?
I guess for us, and I don't want to give too much alpha away. I guess. For us, it's looking at the price action of the sneakers. So understanding the price action, the volume action, just like you're picking a stock, right? Once you start to see certain trends, you start to jump on early and you ride the wave. And the other great thing that I have, which I think most people can't replicate, is because we have the marketplace, right? We have heaps of data points in the marketplace that informs us what sneakers what people are searching, what people are buying.
Yeah.
Whether volume of certain stock is going low, so therefore you can kind of guesstimate that the price is going to go up.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of proprietary data that we have on our end because we run the marketplace, which is synergistic to the fund.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be really hard to replicate the fund. If anyone else wants to really do it, it's really hard to do it. Just because they don't have access to the data that we have.
Okay.
So it's a really data-driven approach based on all the data that we have.
Yeah. And this is Is there anyone else doing a similar thing like this, or this is the one of like the first of its own?
I haven't heard of anything. I think we're the world's first.
Interesting, man. Hey, man, that's the disruption we're talking about here, man. Like everywhere we go, bro. Like, because most of the time now, man, I'm just thinking like, if you guys start a business, the first thing I gotta think of, how can I disrupt the current market? And that's one of the things, and that's what really got me interested is alternative asset class.
Yeah, and that's my advice too, right? Like at first, like we didn't set out to disrupt the market. So I think at first you can always try to be a small business. Like, at first we didn't expect to compete directly against Goat or Stockx. It was just about, providing this service to Australians. But then over time, once you keep grinding away, you start to provide insights, right? Like the way, the analogy that I use is that, when you're climbing up a mountain, the higher you get, the more you see. And then it helps you make better decisions. And so, at the bottom, before you even start, it's hard to foresee. And this is why I don't recommend people plan too much, especially when they're jumping into business.
Yeah.
I think, like everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right?
Yeah, man.
So it's all about kind of doing it and then iterating and learning from that and then doing more and then learning more. And then before you know it, you've gone far.
Yeah.
So that's my advice.
Yeah, man. Hopefully we see as an ETF, man. That's something I'm keen if it goes well. I wish you all the best, and we can,
Thanks, man.
I love to chuck some money and stuff like that, man. So
look, I'm happy to have you.
Yeah. Well, look, in terms of technology, so because right now the big thing that we spoke about, and a big thing what we're seeing right now is cultural currency.
Yep.
Organizations these days can't thrive, they can't succeed if you're not catching up with what's trending out there, but then also buying into the culture that you're in. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing that there's a synergy between storytelling, and we're seeing a synergy between marketing and the culture, and then technology, right? So in terms of just starting off, where do you see technology disrupting the market right now within the sneaker reseller marketplace? Or is it NFTs? Because NFTs just came out, and then Nike is actually, I was reading on the other day that Nike is actually looking to start selling digital sneakers for an NFT called Crypto Kicks. I think that's what they're going to name it. Do you see a viable market in that, or what other trends do you see in technology when it comes to the market?
Yeah, so definitely. Like I think something like Crypto Kicks would do quite well. Because people want to have a piece of it, it's like having rights to something, right? So people always want to have a piece of something that they find sentimental, and that's what our business is based on.
Yeah,
our business is based on people love the shoes because there's sentimental value, there's emotional value, or like you're saying, cultural currency there, which is why they buy it. And I think there's room for both. Like I think there's room to kind of own something digitally, but also people just love the tangible kicks in their hand or wearing the kicks, right? That also has a lot of value too. So I think to answer your question, I think it can exist, it can coexist. But at the same time, I think it's also about having the digital will also grow interest in the physical. And so if the NFTs go insane and goes gangbusters, people are going to be more interested in actually buying the shoes themselves. So I see that as a net positive for us.
Yeah. Potential marketplace for NFTs on PUSHAS.
Like I try to stay focused, so that would be down the line. Yeah.
Okay, and so obviously NFTs is one thing, and we saw the rise in the first quarter of this year, right? Just the topic of NFTs is coming up so much, but do you see any other trends in technology that might affect the sneaker reseller marketplace right now, or any big things that you're focused on, or
so
what other trends are there?
Yeah, so I think generally for us, I think even let's take the topic of marketplaces. I think the marketplaces that are on in the market right now are kind of marketplaces 1.0. So the way I think about it, it's like currently we're at the stage where it's like the Craigslist of the world, right? Or, the real estates of the world. So I think the next stage is being more service orientated for the marketplace, and it becomes marketplace 2.0. So an example is, and it's a business that I look up to a lot. An example is Open Door, right? So Open Door is a 2.0 marketplace because it's providing different services on top of just being a marketplace that connects real estate agents with buyers.
Yeah.
And they provide liquidity. They help people market. It's more full suite, and I believe that's the future for marketplaces. So even with us, like we're trying to build out more full services for our resellers, which down the line we're working on a couple of interesting things, and I think that's the future. Yeah. So from that tech perspective, I think that's it. But other than that, I think sneakers is an industry where it's quite adaptive. So whenever there's something new that comes in, sneakers will find a way to kind of bring that into the whole sneaker industry as well. So I'm sure there's things on the horizon that I don't even see. But I'm sure we'll be able to find ways to capitalize on it.
Cool, man. Well, look, end of the day, man, that's like exciting things. I think a lot of people these days, like we said, man, a lot of millennials are trying to find different ways to make money. And right now we're always brought into, go uni, get a degree, go get a job, and pretty much just buy for a house. Man, I think that's a fucking trap, to be honest.
I agree.
You know what I mean? Just make your money first before you get into anything like that. And
Exactly.
glad to hear that PUSHAS is giving people an opportunity to where they can be their own entrepreneurs per se, where like they can buy sneakers, use a marketplace, and resell. And hopefully the asset fund where they can invest in a viable option and asset just like sneakers. That's exciting stuff, man. I think that's definitely going to disrupt the market.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
But yeah, man, look, that's about it for today. I really appreciate it. Very insightful. So for anyone to get started in get started into reselling sneakers, definitely look into pushas.com. Definitely follow some of the guides that Justin has given us. Look for some intermediaries and then go from there, man. But yeah, really appreciate the time for having you here, and all the best.
Happy to be here, man. Thank you, man. It's always a pleasure.